Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of the Now Add Salt podcast. This is a podcast designed to help CPAs, bookkeepers, tax advisors, and keeping up with all the changes regarding sales tax, state and local taxes. Now Add Salt. Today, I'd like to welcome in my co-host, Ryan Johnson. Ryan, welcome. And today, Ryan, we're going to be talking to our audience all about how to help their clients set up sales taxes on the most popular platform for e-commerce sellers, for anybody that wants to sell something on their website. It could be products, could be services, and that is Shopify. And so for CPAs, bookkeepers, tax advisors in public practice, this is something that I'm sure that most of you, by far, most of you have stayed far away from. Like, this isn't even something that we can do. And things are constantly changing. So for this discussion today, we've got a special guest speaker. And Regan, can you join us?
Yeah, hi.
Hi there, Regan. So Regan is our heads up our team that does registrations for businesses and platform setup. So helps them get registered in whatever state they need to be registered in to collect sales tax in the first place. And then, or not necessarily in this order, but also helps companies get set up on Amazon or eBay and certainly on Shopify. Right, Regan?
Yes.
So e-commerce sellers from all over the world, right?
Yeah.
How do you like working with people from all over the world?
I love it. I want to go visit them all.
Some of them hard to understand.
You got clients in how many different countries that you can think of?
Oh, a lot.
No, we got UK, South Africa.
Yeah. Israel, Egypt,
Hong
Kong, and China, everywhere.
Right. And a lot in the US, right? It's not, I don't want to leave out our friends in the US, but it just points out that the world is a lot bigger now for tax preparers, tax advisors, because just like we never would have thought we could have clients from around the world, now a good percentage of our clients are from outside the US. And there's just a lot more opportunities now to help them because they want to sell into the US. So that means they have US tax responsibilities, state and local tax responsibilities, and federal tax responsibilities. So there's just a world of opportunity. So I want to go through the instructions. So you might think, well, at least I can follow the instructions on Shopify to help my clients set themselves up. And the instructions are pretty good. There's just a few areas that I want to clarify so that will help you help your clients. All right, so it's got some good resources there. It talks about Nexus and what creates Nexus. So I think that's worthwhile. It talks about this recent Wayfair case, which changed everything. It talks about destination basis and origin basis. And here's an area that I think is a kind of a weakness for Shopify sales tax. Because I think if you Google sales taxes and online platforms, et cetera, you're going to find a lot of discussion of this origin and destination basis. Like, it's a really big deal. And it can make people, they're like, hey, okay, I know how this works. If it's origin, then we charge tax in the home state. If it's destination, then we tax based on where the sale is made. And it's just not that way. If that only applies when it's an intrastate sale, meaning you ship from your location or a warehouse in a state to a customer in that same state. That's the only time origin basis plays a factor. And that's the thing that I just want to make sure that everybody understands. If it's an interstate sale, meaning you ship from your store or from a warehouse in another state to a customer in another state, then it's always based on where the customer is located, the tax rate where the customer is located. If we're in an origin-based state, so here's a list of them from Shopify, then the tax rate, if you sell from your location in Texas, from a warehouse in Texas to a customer in another city in Texas, then Texas is pretty complicated on what tax rates to charge, because some of its local rates are based on the origin city, and then some of its local rates are based on the destination city, and it's complicated. But if you're in Arizona, which is an origin-based state, selling to a customer in Texas, guess what? The origin or not doesn't matter. It's the location of the buyer in Texas that matters, all right? So now, sales tax, I don't have to tell you this, but sales tax is super complicated. And there's like 13,000 taxing jurisdictions. So trying to make things simple, this is where I give a kudos to Shopify, because for most sellers, they don't need it to be super complicated. They just need a basic system. And so this is what Shopify has. They have a Shopify Plus, which allows you to be very sophisticated in what rates you charge. But Shopify Basic at least does an automatic tax rate calculation. So the way they determine what tax rate to charge is based on a 5-digit zip code of either your store's address, so your own location zip code, or the shipping address of your customer. So in that way, they are pretty sophisticated, say, compared to like eBay, right? Regan, in eBay, you just enter one rate per state, right?
Yes.
So that's really unsophisticated. So Shopify is more sophisticated, but for a high volume seller, just the Shopify Basic won't be sophisticated enough. But for most sellers, for most of your clients, you would think this would work just fine. It talks about what a remote seller is. I don't think that's so important. But here's some examples. So let's say you have a store. You could have a physical store. You could have an online store. Anyway, you're located. You yourself that operate the store, your client, is located in Orlando, Florida. So you don't have any presence in any other state. Now, we'll talk about economic presence here in a bit. But assuming you have no other presence in any other state, let's see what happens. If you sell to a customer in Miami, then you're going to charge Florida tax because this is your home state. You have nexus there. And it's a intrastate sale, so potentially this origin-based rules apply, but Florida is not an origin state. So the specific tax rate that it will charge to your customer is based on the zip code of that customer in Miami. Pretty good. That's really actually very good. That will really help you charge the right rate in Florida, much better than just saying, let's just pick a high rate, the highest rate in Florida, and just charge them that. That's basically what you would do in eBay.
I have a quick question with
All
that. Right. With Shopify, do you need to put in the zip code for the customer's address in Miami, or is Shopify going to determine that location itself?
But Regan, you're going to correct me, all right? But
Okay.
when we'll walk through the setup here in a minute, but and Ryan, I know you already know the answer, but you're asking on behalf of our CPAs out there.
Right.
And so when you're doing the setup, you're going to add your zip codes for wherever you have a physical presence, or we'll talk about what to do if you have economic presence. And then that tells Shopify you have nexus in Florida. And then it will automatically determine, based on your customer ship to address, what tax rate applies in Miami. So that's automated, and that's really good. On the other hand, if you sell to a customer in New York, Reagan, did I get that right, by the way?
Yes.
All right. Feel free to correct. If you sell to a customer in New York and you have no nexus there, then you wouldn't charge any sales tax there. Now let's go to another example. Let's say you have a store in Pittsburgh, that's where you're located, no nexus in any other state, but you sell to a customer in Harrisburg. Now, Pennsylvania is an origin-based state, so it disregards the zip code of your customer and just charges tax based on the zip code of your address, all right? So you will just charge the Pittsburgh local taxes. That's the key here, which is what you should be doing. And again, you had a customer in New York, but you don't have nexus in New York, so you don't charge tax on any tax. You don't charge Pennsylvania tax. You don't charge any tax because you don't have nexus in New York. So we're very clear there. Now, let's go to a more complicated scenario. You have a store in San Fran, California, and a distribution center in Seattle. So in this case, your San Francisco store sells a product to a customer in San Jose, California. I'm assuming that it comes from your store in San Francisco for this example, because it says the state, county, and city taxes are based on your store zip code, but the district taxes are based on your buyer zip code in San Jose. So that's how California local taxes work. If the product was coming from Washington, then it would just be the buyer zip code in San Jose, I believe. Now, here's where I have a problem with Shopify's directions here, because if you sell to a customer in Washington, and I'm assuming that the product comes from a location in Washington, not from California, it says you charge tax. Correct, you do charge tax, and because you have nexus in Washington. And it says the city taxes, state, county, and city taxes are based on your store zip code, but the district taxes are based on your buyer zip code in Olympia. I don't think that's right. I think that and I don't know exactly how Shopify does this, but since the product is an interstate delivery, it doesn't matter if it's coming from California or from Washington, then you should only charge Washington state taxes. So minor problem there. If your clients are fairly at low volume, this isn't going to be a big deal. Let's go through the process of setting up automatic tax rates. So it's relatively simple. You go to Settings, General, find the taxes, and then click on the United States. All right, so United States, and you're going to, since we are setting up the automatic tax rate, you're going to check that box that says automatic, calculate taxes automatically. And then you'll go through and add your physical presence location for every state where you have physical presence. So you're just going to enter the state and the zip code where your store or warehouse is located in every case, right? Then you enter the zip code and you click on Add State. So voila, you've got your states added. And you can see what how the rates break down in each state. Another question that you have at the beginning is, should you include taxes in the price, and should you tax shipping? Should you check those boxes? Regan, are you familiar with those boxes at the beginning?
When you first start setting up
when
in
you're
the
very
United States.
first, it asks you those questions off the top, like, do you want to include taxes in the price?
We say yes. We put the charge taxes on shipping rates.
You say yes.
To the automatic one, calculated.
Right. So we leave them both blank in this case, right? Because we don't want if we're selling something for $50, we don't want to have the total price be 50. We want the total price to be 50 plus sales tax. And if you were to check that box, this is more addressing how it works in foreign countries outside the U.S. But in the United States, customers are used to paying tax extra. So if you were to check that box, good tip for you, then it just charges your customer $50 and then backs into the tax. So you end up getting less. So if you want to sell something for $50, then you want to collect $50 plus tax. So don't check that box. And also do not check the box about the shipping, because as you can see, it automatically taxes shipping, which in the most cases is what you want to do. All right, it's possible that you might have a special application, and that would be good to talk to us about why you wouldn't want to check those boxes. All right, now if you want to, we don't want to remove a physical presence, or not for purposes of our discussion today, but let's say you wanted to do something manual. And so then you would go choose the United States again and say, uncheck the box that's calculate tax automatically. And that means you would have to specify the taxes manually for each state and region. And so that would be quite a process that typically we wouldn't want to do. Now, let's say that you want to consider economic nexus. This is tricky for the Shopify base product, but there is a workaround for it. So if you have economic nexus in many states, and you probably would if you're doing volume of any level, then you also have to set up those locations even though you don't have a store or a distribution center in any of these places. It's not bad in a state that just has a flat tax, a single rate state. There are some of those. A single rate state that's a destination state. Then you just take any zip code in that state and put it in there. It's also not bad if you have a state that's a destination state. The only problem there is for states that are destination states, you would want to pick a zip code that probably has the highest tax rate in that state, so that you're not caught in a situation where you don't collect enough taxes. So that's why it's kind of a workaround. It's a little bit of a mess, potentially, for a high volume seller. Potentially, you could be in a situation where you're collecting tax in just one jurisdiction, and really you should be collecting tax in a lot of different jurisdictions. So that could be a bit of a pain. If you're an international seller and you don't have physical presence in the United States, then you can do a manual rate, or you can, if you have economic presence, then you would do the same method of creating a kind of a quasi-presence in the Shopify platform. It's a little bit of a hack to do it this way, but a low volume seller, not a lot of dollars involved, then that workaround will work just fine. But if you're a higher volume seller, here's a good recommendation. This is what I see Shopify saying basically is, yikes, if it gets complicated, then you better upgrade to Shopify Plus, and then you can use the Avalara plugin to do it on a much more granular basis, and that's probably what you want to do. So bottom line for CPAs and tax advisors out there, this is something you can definitely do for your clients. If you want to know more about how we do this and other things, then you would be a candidate for our mentoring group, and we would talk to you about what more things do we do, what do we price it, how do we sell it, how do we make it a value for both the for the client and for the tax advisor. Otherwise, I think this will help you at least get it set up for your clients. Also, if you have clients who need this service, then this would be a good time to contact us, because then you can get Regan's team involved and she can answer all of your questions for your clients and get them set up in kind of a state tax handled approach where we just take care of it for them and they really don't have to worry about it, and neither do you. But if you're in that small group of tax advisors that wants to start doing some of this yourself, and then I highly recommend it. The water's warm, you should jump in, and you should just be a member of our mentoring group and figure out how to do it. So, Regan, thank you very much for your expert advice and participation.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Andy.
All right, and Ryan, thank you. And that concludes this week's episode of the Now Add Sal podcast. See you next week.
See you later.